What's your biggest I fucked up moment? When I was in 7th grade, my parents woke me up from bed and took me to the guest room where they proceeded to show me what history on the computer was. I read a manifest wrong and pumped the wrong chemical down an oil well and literally ruined a brand new well worth about 4 million. They had to abandon it. Wrestling with my brother, I try to throw him over my hip and I start falling sideways and realize, oh fuck, he's going over my knee, followed by a surprisingly loud pop. Don't know how I didn't dislocate it or tear a tendon, but I didn't. But yeah, sprained knees ain't fun. For me, not a lot of fucked up moments yet, but me and my brother sprinted on a pedestrian crossing and got hit by a car about 7 years ago. I realized that I had fucked up when I noticed I was flying through the air. Our very old blender started smoking when I was using it, so I frantically unplugged it at the wall and started taking it apart. It was when I heard the whirring and felt the blade go through my fingertip that I realized that in my panic I had instead unplugged the toaster from the socket next to it. I once accidentally created an infinite network loop on my college campus network and crashed the entire school's internet. This was during my certification program as a Cisco certified networking administrator. In my A-levels I wrote an entire essay on Islam. We studied Judaism. I didn't go to the dentist for 5 years out of sheer laziness. 5 cavities, 1 pulled tooth, 1 full tooth implant and a root canal later. I regret that decision. I used to work at an aggregate company. Once I got an order address wrong and sent 22 tons of topsoil to some poor bastard's laneway. Whoops. Not me, but I went to a bank once to ask a question. I handed some paperwork to a manager who was already holding paperwork relating to a vault, presumably with very sensitive information on it. He put my paperwork on top of what he was already holding and simply handed back the entire stack when he was finished answering my question. I looked at the stack of paper, saw that I had his document, and handed it back saying, "Is this yours?" He snatched the document out of my hands really quickly and then looked at me with eyes all scared and wide. He probably saw his job flash right before his eyes. Many moons ago, husband was making dinner and came into the living room while the oven was preheating. As we watched TV, an explosion rocked the kitchen. The casserole dish had exploded, sending deadly shards everywhere. It was on the burner that he mistakenly turned on instead of the oven. Pretty much anything I did while I was still an active alcoholic. But what stands out the most is when I got too drunk to take my kid trick or treating. I'll never forget that. I got sober a couple of weeks later and have been since. 8 years, and every time I think about it, it still makes my stomach hurt. I know people have much worse stories about what they did to their children drunk, but this just showed me how I couldn't even meet the smallest commitment to make my daughter happy. At a job interview for Whataburger, and the guy asks, "Do you think you could handle this job?" And for some insane reason I answered like Elle Woods in Legally Blonde when she says, "What? Like it's hard?" After her ex is shocked she got into law school. As soon as I said it, I realized I sounded like an asshole, and I watched this 30-something manager sneer in disapproval at 16-year-old me, probably shouting in his head about arrogant youth or something. He thanked me for coming in, and that was that. Needless to say, I didn't get the job. The dumb shit you do in your teens, man. My ex left her panties at my house a few months before I started dating my current girlfriend, and when I found them, I thought they were my currents. Needless to say, when I handed her the panties like, "Hey, you left these," with a smile on my face, and she told me they weren't hers, my heart dropped like an anvil. She was definitely pissed off for a few days, but we are fine now. Not me, but my town's mayor told an EMT to kill herself during the aftermath of a budget meeting, right in front of me. The regret that washed over his face when he realized it was still streaming to YouTube for the town to see was priceless. After a delightful shower one evening, I decided to blow dry my hair using the hairdryer that had some exposed wiring. It had always worked decently, so I figured NBD, it's fine. Anyway, I got electrocuted and my hand got burned, but on the plus side I got to see blue lightning go pinging up my arm. I no longer own a hairdryer. Happened when I was about 7. Chased my brother inside the house, and as I yanked the front door open, my big toe was caught and completely ripped open between my toes. Bro said I went silent and face turned white. Then he looked down and saw all the blood on our deck. He was a great big bro, scooped me up and set me down on some stairs with a towel, then ran to get mom and dad one emergency trip later, and I'm all stitched up having had to almost amputate my toe. Will be see I'm an idiot. The classic, I thought this edible ain't shit, and then ate another one. I was carrying my niece downstairs. Keep in mind she was like 9 months old, and then I spaced out, and I heard a thump on the ground, so I looked to see what the loud noise was, and it was my niece. BTW, she isn't dead. I was 19 or 20, and didn't know how overdraft protection worked. Keeps letting charges go through, and charges fees on top, or that banks used to automatically enroll you. I overdrafted my bank account by $1,000 and didn't find out until my car was beyond empty and my gas purchase got declined. This was before the time of apps and smartphones, in my defense. Got a crash course in finances that day. Never did it again. The moment police put the cuffs on me after being on the run for a few days. Stole from my job, had a horrible heroin addiction, and was around all the wrong people. 3 months in jail and 4 months of house arrest after. Thank God I met who is now my wife shortly after, and I got my shit together. Now I have a great job and a 4-year-old son. Life is good now. It wasn't easy but very much worth the effort. I went to a job interview after working a 12-hour shift, and when asked what's my biggest weakness or flaw, I said without thinking I'm a pervert. The woman interviewing me just paused and asked me another question, and then ended the interview. I didn't get the job. One summer at my grandparents' house in the Colorado mountains, I was playing with fireworks alone. And being around 10 or so, I wasn't exactly responsible. I ended up lighting one of those bouncing spinning things and threw it off the hill onto the gravel road. It went crazy, shooting sparks everywhere, then bounced off the road and down a hill. I rushed down after it and found that every place it hopped it had lit a fire. Each one already about knee high, dry pine needles. I luckily was smart enough to stomp each one out. To this day I always think about what would have happened if I didn't go down the hill after it. Punched my brother in the throat and crushed his windpipe. He was in the hospital for a while, but was okay in the end. I honestly just took a blind wild swing. I could just have easily hit him in the chest. I was trying to back into a parking space in my 18-wheeler in pitch black with blinding snow with barely 6 months of experience under my belt. I got the spot lined up, but the truck wasn't straight and all the backing and straightening was causing me to shimmy to the right every time I did it, and I didn't think to get out and look one more time and smash the fuck out of the front end of another truck. I was fired and sent home on a Greyhound the next day, and it took me like a month and a half to find a company who would hire a guy with 6 months of experience who was fired for safety reasons. But I found a company, repair my record, and now have 7 years driving experience making roughly $60K a year. I forgot to drop the anchor for a 550-ton barge a company I work for owns, and it's currently still beached on the Vancouver seawall after 12 weeks of attempts to remove it. Going to law school. I'll never pay it off. I hate being a lawyer. One year we purchased a new house. For Christmas that year, I decided I would buy a ton of things we needed off the for the house to-do list. And then proceeded to gift them to my wife for her Christmas gifts. A clothing iron, blender, pots and pans, etc. You get it. Never again. One time I studied the wrong material for one of my midterms and ended up bombing it. My professor was understandably confused when I admitted I didn't study the right parts. My first pregnancy, when I was 19, everything felt pretty grown up and harsh just then. DUI. Anyone who thinks people get away easy with it is wrong. It's absolutely not worth doing ever. You think it won't be you until it is. And it sucks. Pulled to stop at red light in the left lane. Smiled at cop in right lane next to me. Put foot on gas and ran red light. Used to work for Enterprise. Told a customer a brand new car was a diesel, as the others in the fleet were, when it was a petrol. They broke down in a rural area, car was written off. It was a Mercedes E-Class. Me and my friends were at a restaurant and we ate our starters and we were waiting for our main meals. I look over and see my friend, at the time a quiet 16-year girl, rubbing her stomach like what pregnant women in photo shoots do. I say to her jokingly, "Are you sick or pregnant?" And she instantly looks up terrified. Turns out she was secretly 8 weeks pregnant, and I accidentally outed it to the table. She later on had an abortion, and came to me first for support. Still feel bad about accidentally saying it out loud. I was almost to a year into sobriety from heroin, after 8 years of heavy use, and I relapsed last week. Fucking devastating. When I was like 14 or 15 I was drilling a thick small metal plate holding it with my hand. Yeah, I drilled through my finger. The drill bit broke into 3 pieces when it hit the floor, one just rolled somewhere, one stayed in the drill, one stayed in my finger. It never got removed, because I went to see a doctor a bit late, and it had healed by then, so I still have a drill bit in the entirety of my finger's width. Talking shit about my coworker and accidentally sending it to them instead of the person meant for it. I went into his office the next day, and apologized to him for the message. Eek. It was at that moment he knew how I really felt. Lol. When I started boozing, man what a terrible mistake. I'm an HVAC tech. About 13 years ago I was replacing an expansion valve on an air handler in a second floor apartment closet which required a torch. Well, I've got my torch going, and didn't realize there was a sprinkler 2 feet above where I was brazing. Boom. The sheer force of the water blasted through the closet wall, flooded the whole apartment and the apartment below. I couldn't get the water turned off, but luckily the FD showed up very fast and shut it off from the main. Shitty day. Wasn't fired, surprisingly. A hot girl that I've been seeing casually messaged me on premiere night. She was tipsy from her company Christmas party and asked me to come and take her home. I chose to watch the movie instead, since my friends and I were already lined up outside the cinema. She basically stopped messaging me after that, and we drifted apart. The movie I saw that night. Rise of fucking Skywalker. I still think about that decision to this day. While waiting for our parents to pack the car for a family trip, I played inside the car and accidentally disengaged the parking brake. The car rolled down the driveway, crossed the street, and bumped a neighbor's car, then crushing their kiddie pool. I remember vividly my dad saying that, if it were legal, he would have left me at home. Giving birth, don't get me wrong. The best thing that ever happened to me, but immediately afterwards, I remember thinking back, quote, "Oh shit. No getting out of this one." Lost my 5k savings on crypto. Mistakes are expensive. I move orthopedics around, and one cell dropped off the wrong sized patella, kneecap, implant to a surgery, and left without realizing it. Got a call about an hour later from a very unhappy doctor. I came back with the right one as soon as possible, but anything that leaves a patient on the table for longer than necessary is a big no-no at my job. In high school I somehow managed to get into the varsity football game as a tight end. I was in charge of getting the plays from the coach and giving them to the QB. It was a 7-0 game, and on the last play of the game I by mistake called the wrong play, QB got sacked and we lost. I had wrongly called a pass play to myself, so my coach and all the players thought I did it on purpose, trying to be the hero. I never told anyone it was mistake till today. I was 14 when I got my first job at a golf course. Like the stupid kid I was trying to do donuts in the golf cart in the parking lot. Hit the owner of the course's brand new Dodge Durango SRT. Still had the dealer plates. Didn't even get fired. I once tried to console a girl I had a crush on who was crying hysterically. As I'm soothing her I quip, "Hey, it's not like you have herpes," and she definitely had herpes, and that's definitely why she was crying.